Hello, world. We are live. Welcome to the July 2025 edition of the Laravel Worldwide Meetup. My name is Dan Sapelsa. I'm a developer at Vehicle, and along with my co-host, Margaret Tavares, we're thrilled to once again bring you a great talk from a member of the Laravel community, sharing some great insights in this framework we love so much. Speaking of my co-host, Margaret, how are you doing today?
I'm doing pretty good, Dan. How about yourself?
I'm doing quite well, thank you. We are in the heat of summer here in Canada. We've got Laracon US just around the corner here that we're all really excited about, and we've got another great talk today. So it's a trifecta of greatness over here for me. Before we get to today's talk, we do have, as we always do, have a little bit of housekeeping to take care of. So let's have a look at what we got community wise going on.
Great. Thanks so much, Dan. Welcome back, everybody, and welcome to any new faces or new people that are joining us for the first time. What we like to do is run through some community events or resources so you can also be aware of what's going on in the Laravel community. So first off, we have laravelnews.com run by Eric Barnes and his team. Harris is one of them. So you can join and take a look at that website to know what's going on in the community. They have a weekly email newsletter. So check them out at laravelnews.com. There's also a Laravel News podcast ran by Jake Bennett and Michael Drinda. They discuss all the latest Laravel releases in the last week. They also have tutorials and happenings in the Laravel community, so check them out. We also have Larajobs, so if you're somebody that's looking to hire, looking to post a job, and if you have any Laravel job needs, please check them out. It's a great resource. And we also want to feature a couple other job posts in the community this month. So these are companies that are looking for Laravel developers. You can find more information in the description box below. But we'd like to give a shout out to On The Go Systems, Bamboo HR, Inside Real Estate, Fortune, ZEP, Serbo, Sports Recruits. We also have beta testing, Trend Capital Holdings, Gab, Give Butter, Skyway Canada. Laravel isn't going anywhere, so if you want to take a look and see what job positions they have open, please take a look in the description below. We also have Laracast is another great resource, so big thank you to Jeffrey Way for running this awesome resource. So if you'd like to build your Laravel skills and have a platform to learn with other Laravel developers in the community, please check them out at laracast.com. There's also some upcoming Laravel events. So Laracon US is something that we're really excited for. It's next week. Dan and I will both be there. Same with Harris. There's some tickets still available, but only late tickets. So get them before they're gone, and that's happening next week. Laravel Live Denmark is another exciting event. It's coming up very soon. Tickets are still available. It's going to be in Copenhagen, Denmark, August 21st to 22nd. Check them out at laravellive.tk. There's also another event, Longhorn PHP, which is going to be happening in Austin, Texas. Tickets are going to be available, and that's going to be October 23rd to 25th. So check them out at longhornphp.com. There's also the International PHP Conference. This is going to be happening in Munich, Germany. Tickets are available, and the end of October is when this event's going to happen, and check them out at phpconference.com. There's also the PHP user group. This is an online hybrid meetup group, so check them out at meetup.com. And also big thanks to our host Vehicle for their support in relaunching this meetup. So they have a great team of developers. So if you have any Laravel problem, they'd be happy to help you out. So hit them up at vehicle.com or go at vehicle.com. And one last thing, we have a giveaway that we do every meetup. So if you'd like to sign up to win one of 2 one-year subscriptions to any JetBrains IDE, you can scan that QR code and we'll provide more details at the end of our meetup.
We will show the UR code once again at the end of the meetup.
Exactly. All right, and I'll pass it off to Dan to introduce our wonderful speaker for today.
And that, brings us to today's talk that we're super excited about. Our today's speaker, Harris Raftopoulos, is a longtime Laravel community member, senior software engineer, co-organizer of the Laravel Greece meetup, and probably we all know him best as a staff writer at Laravel News, where he shares so many great insights on like we said, the framework we love so much. And I think today's talk is going to be very much in that vein, queues, jobs, and workers, and kind of dealing with queues and ways to deal with queues and related queue issues you may run into. It's something we've probably all dealt with a number of times. So excited to hear what Harris has to say. So without further ado, let's bring him in here. There he is. Harris, how are you today?
Hi, everyone. I'm great. Thanks for having me.
We are super excited to have you. And like I said, I think this is one of those topics. Dealing with queues and running queues in production is probably something, if you've worked with Laravel for any amount of time, you've done before, and you've probably had issues to deal with in that. So I'm really excited to see what insights you have to share on that. So without further ado, if you want to share your screen, Harris, we can probably hand things off to you, and we'll step backstage and we'll talk to you in a little bit.
Perfect.
Oh, there we go. User error. All right, I think we're good to go. So Margaret and I will step backstage, and we'll talk to you shortly. Harris, take it away.
Thank you. All right. Hi, everyone. Thank you for being today's Laravel Worldwide Meetup. So my name is Raftopoulos, like the host already said, and I'm really excited to talk about building resilient background processing in Laravel using queues, jobs, and workers, of course. So whether you're sending emails, processing images, or integrating with third-party APIs, for example, understanding Laravel's queue system is crucial for scalable applications. So today we will explore how queues work and use a fun theme park metaphor in order to learn more, dive into best practices, and of course, I will also show you some live examples. So let's dive right in. But before going deeper, we ask ourselves, why do we use queues and what is a queue? So let's start with the fundamentals very quickly. So a queue is like a line at an attraction park. So tasks come in, they wait their turn and get processed in order. So in Laravel, it's a list of jobs waiting for background workers. So there is a beauty in decoupling those time-consuming operations from user requests. So when someone, for example, uploads a photo, instead of making them wait while you resize the photo or optimize the photo, you queue those tasks and respond back to the user immediately instead. So why should you care about queues? That's the question. So 5 reasons why. The first one is performance. We improve response time because we queue the task and respond back to the user immediately, like mentioned. So then we have reliability. We have the built-in retry mechanism that Laravel provides to us for network issues, for API failures, and more. Then we also have scalability. And this is crucial because you can scale your background processing independently from your web service. Very crucial to understand. And we have resource management, which means that we prevent long-running tasks from affecting web performance. And last but not least, we have fault tolerance. So let's say that a background job crashes. This doesn't bring down your whole web application. On the contrary, if you have, for example, a web request and something goes wrong, the whole app fails. You give a 500 probably to the user, and that's not optimal, right? So would you rather have users wait 30 seconds for processing or respond back to them immediately, and handle what you want in the background? I would definitely choose the second one every time. So speaking about visual metaphors, I would like to welcome you all to Artisan Amusements. So this theme park is our perfect metaphor for Laravel jobs and Laravel queues, of course. Because, for example, we have the jobs, right? We have the users here. We have the queue line. So jobs are the visitors of the park, which are individual tasks, that need completed. You have the queue line, which is where the jobs wait patiently for processing. We have the workers right here. Right? So the workers are the right operators. They process and execute the jobs. And we have the maintenance here on the right side, where it's pretty much the monitoring and error handling we have. So Laravel workers need smart handling to keep jobs flowing. That's the idea behind that. And we also have things like rush hours, which is the traffic spikes we get from jobs in our queues. Rides might break down, which is the failed jobs. We have different ride speeds, the queue priorities in our case, and crowd surges. So it's the scaling moments we have. So in this metaphor context as well, I would like you to meet Operator Max in this case. And this will be our guide to understanding Laravel workers today. Max here represents everything a queue good worker is. So he's reliable, he's efficient, he's resilient, just like a Laravel queue worker should be in this case. So a Laravel queue worker is a dedicated process that continuously monitors your system, your queue work for new work. So just like Max here needs proper training and equipment, Laravel workers need proper configuration and monitoring to perform optimally as well. So let's take a look at a high-level overview of Laravel queue system. We have the dispatch. And what this is, thinking about this as the ticket booth, in this case, where jobs enter the system. We have the queue, like we mentioned, which are the queue lines where the jobs wait. We have the workers, like Max, that picks up the jobs from the queue. We have the jobs where all the logic happens. All our logic is inside our jobs. And then we have the completion part, which is we either mark the jobs as completed, as success, or as failure. and we handle them accordingly. And of course, you can start with database queues and seamlessly scale to Redis or SQS or something else that Laravel provides to you without changing your code. And this is very, 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 very cool, right? We don't need to change nothing from our code. You just need to go into your configuration file and change the driver from database to SQS to Redis. Laravel abstracts the backend completely, and this is very cool. So let's now check how Laravel, what's the Laravel queue system eventually. So Laravel uses first in, first out logic, but with a twist, right? So jobs are processed in order. So the first job comes in and goes out. But when a job fails, the worker doesn't get stuck. It moves on, to process the next job immediately. While the failed job, either gets retried or we send it back to the failed jobs table. And this prevents one problematic, job from burning your entire queue. In the usual first in, first out queues, sometimes the job, you need the jobs to complete successfully in the exact order before moving on to the next one. But Laravel doesn't do that exactly. It does provide some tools if you would like to have some sequential processing. Which one of them is called bus batching, so bus chaining, sorry. And we're going to take a look at this later today in an example, of course. So let's give a real world example of this. Let's say that you have an email newsletter, right? And you have hundreds or thousands of emails you have to send. So email sending benefits from the regular behavior that Laravel provides. So one failed email should not block thousands of others. But for example, let's think about it as the theme park. So when one ride fails or has technical issues, other attractions keep operating just fine. We don't have any issues. The rest of the people can go and ride something else in a different park inside our park. So how does a worker actually works? So maybe some of you might not know, but workers are long-lived Laravel processes. And this is crucial to understand. So unlike a normal web request, that boots up our application, handles one request and then dies, workers start once and stay alive indefinitely. So they're continuously polling our system and handle jobs in memory. So without bootstrapping the entire application every time a new job comes in. And this provides like performance boost, right? Because there is no overhead in each of the jobs. And it also provides speed because the jobs execute much faster than separate processes. However, you need to keep in mind one thing. So workers accumulate memory over time, and you might need to periodically restart them in order not to have any memory allocation issues. But Laravel handles that automatically with set configuration options, but you should keep that in mind as well. And let's go ahead and see how does a queue worker run in our terminal. Some very basic examples for now. So you just run the command php artisan queue work, and then you can pass flags. So this flag we have here is queue default. It's the name of the queue. We call it default in this case. Then we pass sleep set to 3. And this means that the worker will go to sleep for 3 seconds before trying to poll for a new job, if there are no jobs available in the queue. And then we have the tries. Tries set to 3, which means that we allow the jobs to fail at least 3 times before we mark it as failed. We can also do that per job, and we're going to check on that later on, for example. So the real-time output shows, jobs executed with timestamps out here. So you can see that we just run the jobs called send welcome email job, and we consume it just fine. But you might also need something like queue prioritization, right? You might, because real applications need multiple queues, with different priorities. You can dispatch jobs to specific queues and control the processing order. So, for example, let's say you have a job called send welcome email job, like the one we're going to see right here. So send welcome email job, we dispatch this job on a queue called email. Then we have a different job called process podcast job, and we dispatch this to a different queue. This one is called hi in this case. Then if we would like to have more queues, we can add them to the flag comma separated. In this case, we can run php artisan queue work and then pass the flag queue. Then the first queue is the one that has the highest priority in our case. It's called hi, then email, and then default. And because we have both our jobs already in the queue, when we try to consume, and the first one in line will be the one from the highest priority queue. In this case, it's the process podcast job. And then we consume everything else. The send welcome email job, as in this case. But I hear you asking, does it actually scale? And the answer is yes. You can scale them. You can scale the workers very simply. And you can, of course, have more workers, which means more parallel jobs in this case. So scaling is simple, but you can have multiple workers, running simultaneously, and each one of them can pull from the same queue. But each worker operates independently, right? Allowing, parallel processing on background tasks. So you can even have service processes like supervisor take care of your system. For example, if a worker, for any reason, crashes, they take care of that and they restart the worker, by themselves. So that's a pretty cool process to have. And Laravel provides great tooling and great APIs for our queue system. So one of these things is some retry strategies and the failure handling as well. So in this case, you can see we have some examples up here. We have tries. We mentioned that before in the queue system. Now we can also add this into a job. This sets the maximum retry attempts of the job, of the failed job. We also have the backoff, which is we configure the delay between the retries because you might not need to retry immediately sometimes, right? Then we have retry until, which is we set the time-based retry limits in this case. And we also have a function called failed. And this failed function, this failed method in the jobs, you can handle the final failures. So when the job is marked failed, you can do stuff like, send an email and report to someone, or send a Slack message, or do whatever you would like in order to handle this failed gracefully in this case. And this resilience through retries makes Laravel, the Laravel queue system very suitable for production environments and is for critical business operations. So based on this retry thing, we also have another thing that Laravel provides. So we can retry failed jobs. Laravel gives us this PHP Artisan Q retry command that you can either use the all thing I added here. So Q retry all to retry all failed jobs from the failed job table and throw them back into the queue, assuming that you have already fixed them, of course. But you can also use specific IDs from the failed jobs as well. Some of you, though, might need something more unique, let's say, right? So sometimes you need to prevent duplicated jobs from being queued, and to have your jobs more embedded. So Laravel provides this thing called should be unique up here. Let's say now, for example, we have this job called refund attendee. So we would like to refund this attendee, and then we implement this should be unique up here. Then the second thing we have is unique ID. This function pretty much defines a unique identifier for the uniqueness of this job. So in this case, we call this refund attendee, and then we pass the ID of the attendee, the ID of the user in this case, right? And then last but not least, we have the unique for, which for how long this job is going to remain unique. In this case, it's going to remain unique for 1 hour. So after 1 hour, this job can be sent back to the queue again. So we have this job here. We make sure it's unique, and we keep it for 1 hour inside our queue. And this prevents, from multiple refund jobs from the same attendee. And this is the idea behind that. We shouldn't be able to queue them simultaneously at the same time in order to avoid, in this case, duplicated refunds, of course. And we also have this thing called middlewares, job middlewares. You might be familiar, with HTTP middlewares from Laravel as well. And Laravel provides this middleware function that we have. So job middlewares provide a way to add, some concern in your jobs. And it's very similar to the HTTP middlewares, of course. So this allows you to implement features like rate limiting or authorized authentication checks or logging, before job execution. So in this specific example, we have a class, we have a job called send daily notification. And what this does is it makes sure that we send the daily notifications, but we also rate limit them in order not to overload the third-party service. In this case, SES. As you can see, the middleware is called new SES rate limited. And what it does is it rate limits the job and makes sure that we don't overload Amazon's SES email server. We have the tries up here set to 0, which means that this job, every time it fails, it's going to retry again and again and again until it stops. But we have fail-proof that with the max exceptions down here set to 5. This means that we allow up to a maximum of 5 exceptions. So when the 5th exception happens, this is marked as failed. We also make this a unique job just to make sure it doesn't get back in the queue, and it is a duplicate, of course. So this setup ensures that daily notification jobs are rate limited and unique per user in this case. So we prevent from spamming and duplications. So now let's move forward and see what's inside this SES rate limited, which is very interesting actually. So we have this middleware, and it's like a regular middleware. We have the handle function at the top, and then we use Redis throttle in this case. So we have the throttle identifier, which is SES rate limited, and then we have some functions for that. So first one is block, and then we set timeout equals to 2. What does this mean? It means that this is how long actually to wait for a lock, for a Redis lock. Then we have another function called allow, and we set it to 10. This is the max locks. So this is what's the maximum number of concurrent jobs we allow for those 2 seconds. And then last but not least, we have every, and we have the decay set to 2 again. So every in this case is the time window for the limit we have for our jobs. And at the end, we see that if throttling succeeds, this job executes, and this is what we want. But it doesn't succeed. If it doesn't succeed in this case, it gets released back to the queue, and in order to retry after 60 seconds, you can see the job released down there. So this prevents overwhelming external services with too many requests. And the fun fact is that this middleware here is the exact middleware we've been using as well when we were communicating with Amazon SES service. It's a pretty cool thing, and you can also check that out. Testing, yes. So testing queues is crucial for reliable applications, right? And Laravel provides excellent testing utilities as well in order to test our queues and jobs. So you can test both. The jobs are dispatched correctly, and that they also perform, a specific type of work, specific assertion. So let's see our example here. We have a class called zip order test, and a function inside it, a test that it is called test orders can be zipped. As you can see at the top, the first thing we add is this queue fake, right? And the queue fake, we add this at the top, and whenever you dispatch a job inside the test, it doesn't get actual dispatch. It's a fake in this case. So you can dispatch as you normally do in your actual code, and then you can do some assertions. Here I have only a couple of assertions, but there are plenty of assertions that you can check. You can check Laravel documentation for that. So in this case, what we do is we check that the queue, we pushed a job called zip order on the orders queue. And the second assertion is that we pushed one of them. So we need to make sure that this is like we want it to be in this case. So this approach ensures that the jobs are dispatched correctly without actually executing during the tests. And this is very nice. And you can also think of something that we mentioned earlier. So we have bus chaining in order to execute sequential, but we also have bus batching to execute parallel, multiple jobs in parallel. So let's now go and see what's the main difference between the two. So we have bus batch, where we create pretty much sequential workflows, and each job must complete before the next one begins. And this is something that you should understand, right? So it is perfect for workloads like, for example, video processing. Because for the video processing, let's say that we have 3 jobs. We download the video. This is job number 1. Then job number 2, we need to process the video. And the final job is to upload the video to S3. all 3 jobs must be executed in sequence. But if one of them fails, the whole sequence fails, the whole chain fails. And that's what we should keep in mind in this case. So we also have bus batching for cases that we might not need sequential processing, but we might need something more parallel, I would say. So parallel execution in this case. So it is this bus batching is ideal for independent operations, like generating, for example, multiple image thumbnails. We don't care if one happens after the other. We need them to be executed in parallel. So bus batching is the way to go in this case. And these are some useful complex workflows that you can, add one inside the other. So you can have bus chains inside bus batches, and the other way around, of course, you can have bus batches inside bus chains. So you can combine these patterns to a more sophisticated job orchestration, of course. So now we have some demo time. Let's go here. And if we open up Tinkerbell, we see that we have bus chains. Let's uncomment that. So in this case, we have 3 different jobs: resize image, optimize image, and upload to S3. Let's go ahead and check our code, what this is. These are very basic, but you just need to see what they do. So resize image is the first job in the chain. What it does logs the info, resizing image, and sleeps for 1 second. Then the second job, optimize image, does pretty much the same, but with a different log. So it optimizes the image, sleeps for 1 second as well. And the third one is upload to S3, which does, you guessed it, exactly the same. It logs uploading to S3 and then sleeps for 1 second as well. So we added the sleep in order to showcase that one should wait for the other. So before executing them, let's go into our terminal and add a couple of workers here. So queue work default. So one worker is this one, and we're going to add a second worker as well to showcase that the second worker will not pick any of the jobs in the chain. So now we have two workers running in the default queue. Let's go to Tinkerbell, run the chain. And you can see now that we have output of the unique identifier of this chain that you can use it in order to do some checkups, of course. Let's go back to our terminal. You see that one of the workers has nothing, but the second one has both 3 jobs. It has all our chain, and this is what we needed to see here. We do have the resize image, which is the first job in the chain. Then we have optimize image, of course, and then we finalize with upload to S3. And we can see this as well if we go to Laravel.log. We see that we have resizing image. We waited for 1 second. Then we got optimizing image, 1 more second, and then last but not least, we upload to S3. Now we move on to the next one, which is the bus chaining, the bus batching. Sorry, we show the bus chaining. So bus batching. 3 different jobs in this case as well. So generate a thumbnail. Again, let's go ahead quickly and see that we do have another log in this case, generating thumbnails with a sleep of 4 seconds. Then we have detect faces, it's the sleep of 3 seconds in this case. And last but not least, tag image content, where we'll sleep for 1 second and we'll log tagging image content as well. So now let's go to our queues. We'll restart the queue, both of them. And I will go to Tinkerbell and run the bus batch. You can see now the batch has been dispatched, and we can see some information about our batch here. I won't go into many details for that one, but if we go back to our workers, you see that one of the workers picked up 2 of the jobs, generate thumbnail and tag image content, 4 seconds and 1 second accordingly, while the other one got the third one, the detect faces one, which is 3 seconds. And this is really cool with batching. You can execute jobs in parallel, many jobs in parallel, where you don't care about sequential thing. So let's stop those jobs and those workers. Let's go to our Laravel log and see that we do have the logs as we show them. So the first one that got executed was generating thumbnails, then detecting faces, and then tagging image content as well. Let's clear this up. And let's move back to our demo time. So there are many cases, though, that this is not enough, and you might need some better monitoring. And Laravel provides that as well. We do have this great tool called Laravel Horizon. So for production systems, you might need, when you need this more comprehensive monitoring, Laravel Horizon provides real-time stats, job throughput, wait times, and it also, you can also see the failure tracking as well. You can track queue health over time, and you can spot bottlenecks before they even happen. And that's very nice. And Horizon's UI is built for teams. You can also have historical data, data in order to see some performance analysis. And we will also see later on that we can also have diagrams. This is very, very essential. So just like in your regular queues, Laravel Horizon also needs to be restarted after the deployment, because this is critical to understand, right? Workers cast the application code pretty much. So they need to be restarted in order to pick up the latest changes of your code. So if you deploy the latest changes, you need to restart either Horizon or your other workers. So you can just add PHP Artisan Horizon terminate, as far as I remember, to at the bottom of your deployment script, and supervisor will make sure to pick it up and bring it back to life again. So more demo time. So let's go back now and see some more demo time. So we're gonna check now Horizon. And before we start Horizon, I would like to showcase what Horizon gives us as configuration. So let's see some of the configuration of Horizon. We won't go into much depth in the full configuration here, but in the most crucial part. So you, for example, you can have domain, it's a different subdomain for your Horizon. You can set up the path, for example, the URL path, that you're going to visit in order to get to the dashboard. Of course, you can set the Redis connection, and I didn't mention that earlier, but in order for you to use Horizon, you need to be running Redis in the background as well. You can have prefixes for for Redis Horizon. You can also add middlewares. You can see we have the web middleware in this case. You can also have some events. For example, there is an event called long-waited detected event that happens. It fires for every connection, for every queue combination you have. So in this case, for our Redis connection, for the queue called default, after 60 seconds, this is going to be fired. So that's pretty cool. I'm going to scroll down here now, the best part, and this is the best part for me. So what we have here, as you can see, is that we have the configuration of the supervisors, the core supervisor settings. We can have multiple supervisors, of course. Here in this case, we have a supervisor called supervisor 1, and the supervisor has its own configuration. So in this case, we have a connection called Redis. We have queues, 3 queues, high, default, and email. We have balance set to auto, and if you're wondering what this balance is, it's the scaling strategy that Horizon uses. So you can either turn it off, you can have it set to simple, which is even distribution between the queues, or you can set it to auto, like I have here, for more intelligent scaling. Then what we have is this thing called auto scaling strategy. And what this is, it determines the scaling based on time, and specifically based on the queue wait time. So depending on the jobs you have in the queue, the more time they take to get consumed, the faster your supervisor will spawn more queue worker processes. And that's very cool in this case. So we do have this thing called max processes, which says pretty much sets the maximum worker processes that supervisors can spawn up. We have things like max time and max jobs. And this guy might come handy compared to what we already said before, right? So max time sets the maximum seconds for a worker that can run before the worker restarts. And similarly to the max jobs, you can set, for example, 10,000 jobs here instead of 0. So if you set up 10,000, this means that after 10,000 jobs, the worker will start. The same thing with time, but with time, of course. And this is crucial to understand because you might need to restart the worker every now and then because of memory accumulation, like we mentioned earlier. Then we have memory, which is memory allocation, the memory that your queue worker will need. In this case, your supervisor will need. The timeout, which in this case means that after 60 seconds, the job is marked as timed out. And last but not least, we have this thing called nice. And the nice is, the higher the nice value in this case, for you to understand, the lower the CPU priority. So these configurations, give you a very fine-grained control over worker behavior, and auto-scaling, of course, as well. And we should also mention that you can configure everything based on your environment as well. So let's say that you have the production environment and the local environment, and you need them to have different kinds of resources. You can do that as well. You can define the supervisors here, and all the configurations we saw up here, you can define them here as well, based on the environment, of course. So that's very cool to understand. So let's now go ahead and boot up Horizon to see. I have already installed Horizon. You can go to Laravel's documentation to see more about it and how to install it. So PHP Artisan Horizon is the way to go. So Horizon started successfully. So what I have here is a very basic installation of Laravel 12. So I'm gonna just visit Horizon. And we are in Horizon's dashboard. And let's go over some things over here. Let's start with the overview. So we can see the jobs per minute. We can see jobs in the past hour. I've already run some jobs. That's why we have number 6 here. The failed job for the past 7 days. What's the status of Horizon? In this case, it's active. The total processes. And keep that in mind that the minimum number of processes for each of the worker of the queues is 1. We have 3 queues in this case without jobs, so 3 processes. That's where the number comes from. We have the max wait time. We also have max runtime and max throughput as well. And if we scroll down here, we'll see the queues that we saw in the configuration before. We have the default queue, we have the email queue, and we have the high queue as well, with the processes and the jobs and the wait time. But obviously there are no jobs in there now, so there's no wait time. And down here, we can see the supervisor, the high level of the supervisor, and the queues that this supervisor supervises. So high, default, and email in this case, and the processes set to 3, and balancing is set to auto. Everything is configured through the configuration file we showed in horizon.php. Now we can go ahead and monitor, for example, some tags. And what a tag is you can have your model here, let's say app models user, like in the example, and then you can also have the ID of a specific model. And this makes sure that you can monitoring, for example, a specific invoicing, right? So let's say that you have an invoice job, you know the ID, you add it here, and you monitor when this job was executed. So, and you see more information about it. Then we will have something called metrics. And metrics, you can have metrics based on jobs, and you can also have metrics based on queues as well. In this case, I have already run some of the jobs. It's the jobs we show earlier today. So detect faces, generate thumbnail, these are all based on jobs. If I go to queue, you see that because we run everything into the default queue, we have the default metrics here. Let's go deeper into that. And you can see that we have the diagrams I mentioned earlier today, right? So we can see the throughput. So how many times the job runs and for which time. This time, you can see the job run 1 time, and this time it only run 9 times as well. And down here, we can see the runtime. So what's the average that those jobs take? And in this case, it's 3 seconds because, as you remember, the detect faces had a sleep of 3 seconds. So the average now comes down to 3 seconds as well. Let's go to batches. And here we can see batches. And what this means is that we can see the unique identifiers. We can see the status, if they're finished or they're canceled or they failed for any reason. What's the size, which means how many jobs were inside the batch. Then the percentage of completion, which means how many of those jobs inside the batch were completed and when the batch was created. So if we go deeper into one of the batches, you see when it was created, when it was finished, and the total number of jobs. And you can see 3 out of 3, so 100% of the jobs were processed for these bots. But if you see the bots down here, you see that 67% of this completed. If we go deeper, we see that we did have some failures in this case. So total jobs set to 3. We have 1 pending job and 2 failed jobs in this case. So only 2 of the jobs were processed, 67%. And the failed jobs, you can see them down here. They are linked to the bots, tag image content, and generate thumbnail. You can retry the failed jobs by clicking the button up here, of course, or you can go into the failed job and see more information. You can see the full stack trace of why your job failed and fix it. So in this case, we pushed this job into the queue called default. We retried only 1 time because we didn't have the retry to a greater number in this case. You can see that you have the unique identifier of the bots linked to this specific job. And down here, you can see the exceptions that you can add, the exact line that this failed for, or you can also use the failed function we mentioned earlier today. And you can see the full stack trace and try and figure out where the issue is and how to fix it, of course. We do have the complete jobs as well. So whenever a job gets completed, it gets into this table here. We can go deeper and see that this job was successful. It was completed by this time, and it was also linked to these paths with the identifier of this unique identifier here. There is another thing called silence jobs, and this is when you don't want the job to be part of the complete job. So let's say that you have a very noisy job. The way to go is to move your job into the silence job. Now let's go ahead in our Tinkerbell, and now that we run Horizon, we're gonna run bus chain and bus buses 5 times just to showcase how they get consumed. So we go to the dashboard, and now you can see that the jobs for the past hour have been increased. The same thing for the jobs down here. If you go to pending jobs, you see that these are the jobs lined up in queue in order to get executed, and they get executed slowly. So whenever they are successful, they go to the completed jobs, and if they fail, they go to the failed job as well. Something that I already mentioned earlier is that for your metrics, if you would like this diagram, to progress, of course, there is a command called PHP Artisan Horizon Snapshot that takes a snapshot of your current metrics and gives you this nice diagram. So this is how you can run jobs and even batches and chains using Horizon. Let's go back to our slides here. So let's now check some of the most common mistakes with failed jobs, so you don't end up like, operator Max here, all stressed up. So you need to make sure that because jobs run in background context and they don't have web requests, there is no session and no authenticated user. So you need to pass your user IDs or the context you would like to have explicitly when dispatching those jobs. Then dispatching jobs in loops without batching also might overwhelm your server, your systems. This is something that you need to think about. I suggest that you use, batches in this case, because the batch feature is built for back operations, for more bulky operations. Then, last but not least, we already mentioned this, I think, 2 or 3 times during this talk. It is very critical and very often forgotten, though. Workers load in memory. So you need to make sure you restart them after deployment in order to get the latest code. Otherwise, you might have some very, very confusing bugs, believe me. So some real-world tips and tricks and some best practices we can have. You need to keep your jobs idempotent. And what this means is that you need to design the jobs to be safely retried without side effects or duplicate operations. Let's say that you have this invoice job we mentioned earlier, and you process the invoice. If for any reason this job goes back into the queue, you need to make sure that it doesn't affect your database. Regardless of how many times you run this job. Then you need to make sure that you monitor your system, you monitor the memory, you monitor your queue length, and you restart or scale the workers proactively. So make sure that you set some alerts before the problem occurs. and then avoid the complex logic inside your jobs. So keep your jobs focused and single purpose, and move some complex logic you might have inside service classes, for example. That might be ideal in this case. And dispatch, clean and focused tasks. So a focused task might be something like send an email to user 123, but something like a different job, like handle user registration, this might be doing too many things, and we don't really want that in this case. So let's recap and see some key takeaways. So queues equals performance plus resilience. It's not just about speed, but reliability through retry mechanisms and decoupled architecture. Build for failure and recover gracefully. So failures are inevitable to happen, for sure. I guarantee that some of your jobs will fail at some point, and you will don't know why, and you need to fix it. Design for proper retry strategies and monitoring. So you won't have any issues there, and no work will be lost. And last but not least, utilize Laravel tools. Use Horizon, use batching, chaining, retries, and scaling in order to solve complex problems with minimal code. So start, simple, but design for growth. And let's give some resources for you so you can take an even deeper look in some of these. So there's this book called Laravel Queues in Action by Mohammed Said, that he's also part of the Laravel team. It's a great book. I definitely recommend it. I've learned so much out of it, and have many things in depth. Then we have Laracast, like the hosts mentioned at the beginning, is a great source for everything, for queues as well. And we also have Laravel documentation. So these resources provide comprehensive coverage of advanced queue patterns in this case, and best practices as well. So that's all I wanted to showcase for now. Thanks for listening. Thanks for joining our journey today through Laravel queues and through the amusement park as well. If you have any questions, don't hesitate to contact me, of course. I'm in all social media. My handle is harrisrafto. And you can also find my personal website, harrisrafto.eu, where I try to post daily. And I also have a daily newsletter with simple tips and tricks about Laravel. So keep your queues flowing smoothly, and thank you about that.
Thank you very much, Harris. That was information packed. That was awesome. Yeah, there's definitely some questions in the chat, and I think Margaret and myself have some questions as well.
Perfect.
I guess maybe I could kick things off a little bit, and I think you did touch on aspects of this, but if I decide to use queues in my Laravel application, right off the bat, I'm met with a number of decisions I can possibly make. Not limited to like what the queue driver is going to be, how I'm actually running my queues, how many workers I'm going to run, what my retry strategy is, all of those sorts of things and more, right? Do you have any general advice for like, how should I kind of like step into that water, and like, how do I decide when I need to maybe configure things differently than the defaults that Laravel gives me?
So my main suggestion would be to use the database driver in order to start with that, for development and for production as well. And this might only be the only thing you need, actually, because if your application is you don't care about scaling too much, you don't even need to go with Redis or SQS. But if you are Redis and SQS, like I mentioned, a great case in this case. And in order for how many queues you have, etc., this depends on your application, right? If you want higher prioritization, you might have different kinds of queues. Same thing if you would like to have, more condensed, let's say, queue drivers. So it all depends on your application in this case.
Yeah, for sure. That
you start slowly. You start, with 1, 2 queues, 3 queues. You need to find the right spot, I think, in this case, because you also need to take into account memory allocation and how much your job takes to run as well. That's also another thing. Mm-hmm. So definitely something that you go as you move forward. Start slowly.
Any general advice specifically? You mentioned like the database driver, I think, is the
database driver to begin with. Yes.
At what point might I want to keep an eye on things to determine like, oh, you know what, I maybe need a little bit more than the database driver offers in terms of like probably performance and speed, right? Do you have any? Is it just a matter of monitoring my database usage, and if I see that spiking a lot, then I might want to switch to a different driver? Or?
Exactly. That's what I would suggest. Yeah. That's the main idea, because you also have the failed job table as well. So you might have more than the actual jobs in there. You also have the failed jobs. You might need to retry them. So if you see doing too many things in your database and you have huge spikes, and you get some kind of delays, let's say in your main application, then use Redis.
So out of the box though, just like lean on the defaults, which is usually a good sensible place to go, and maybe just Horizon is probably the preferred way to run things in production, because I think you have the dual benefit of having a UI to get that insight, but also all the configuration that's built into it that it kind of takes care of for you, right? So lean on the defaults, but monitor your server as you should be doing anyway, and if you see spikes, then determine if you need to switch to some different configuration.
Exactly.
Awesome.
Exactly.
Oh, to hop on like this kind of train, I'm curious, just because Horizon looks great and I feel like it makes things so much easier. And I do even wonder what was life like before even using Horizon. But that's more of a general question. I guess who would be like ideal in like the use case of using Horizon?
Everyone that has a production queue system should use Horizon, in my opinion.
Oh, yeah.
And especially if you have a team, right? It's great for team, for have many members inside the dashboard. See where some spikes happen and everything, and it's great. It's very easy to use. Very easy to use.
Yeah, I guess easy for communication within teams too. You don't always have to be checking.
Exactly.
You can do it asynchronously by looking at something like that.
Exactly, and you can also see, you can see any exception that happened directly in there in the dashboard as well. You don't need to go deeper into your logs or whatever other log system you have. So you can have a high level overview of things.
Just another comment from Zeno that relates to this, I guess, a little bit. Does it slow down the app at all using Horizon? And how hungry is it really?
You don't slow down the app. And the reason is that you can have your queue system in a separate machine. So your web app can be on one machine, your Horizon, and your queue system can be in a totally different machine. And you can scale independently. So it's not. You might see some spikes when you have a database system, and especially when you have too many jobs coming in. But if you're using Redis or SQS, for example, and a different machine, I don't think you have any issues, to be honest. Besides memory allocation issues that you're already monitoring, of course.
Okay, great. Thank you.
There's a couple questions from the chat here I'm going to throw up. One of them I think you touched on a little bit, Harris, but maybe if you have any other insights from Sean or Shane here. There's an issue where the RAM is not being cleared after a job is processed. We have to manually run a cron job to restart supervisor in order to free up memory. Has this issue been resolved? I don't know if you're aware of the specific issue and any strategies for dealing with this. I think you did touch on this a little bit.
I think the main idea is that you need to restart your workers every now and then. And you're not going to lose any data, right? Because your job is still there. You won't clear the jobs. So whenever you restart the queue worker and supervisor picks it up again and restarts it, even if it's Horizon or a regular worker, it's pretty much the same thing. You clear up the memory that way, and then you continue. So I think the best way to do it is set some kind of memory limit, or maybe the max time or max jobs thing that we saw on Horizon, and restart your Horizon process every now and then, just to make sure that you don't have this memory allocation issue. And if you see that you have a high memory allocation issue in your job, maybe you're doing too much in your job. Maybe you need to decouple the job in this case.
It's good insight as well. Thank you. There's another very kind of long question, and it gets into DevOpsy stuff. So I don't know if you have any insight, but this is from Richard. There's a few parts. So he says, "Hey everyone, had a quick question. We currently use Horizon and process in the order of 100,000 jobs a minute. We're currently running Horizon on a separate VM from our Kubernetes cluster, but we'd like to eventually start running Horizon under Kubernetes with auto scaling. However, we haven't been able to find any info on running multiple instances of Horizon. Haven't had a chance to kind of investigate that. Is it possible to run multiple instances of Horizon under Kubernetes, or do we have any? Does the community know of any info that might help Richard out here with what he's looking for?"
I definitely don't know much about Kubernetes in this case and Horizon, but I do know that from our side, we do use multiple instances of Horizon in different machines. I'm pretty sure you can do it in Kubernetes as well in some way, for sure.
Cool. And if there's anyone in the chat maybe has done this, connect with Richard there and see if you can help him out. Thank you. All right. Any questions on your side there, Margaret?
Those are all the questions that I had. You just got that last one that I had there too. I guess another question.
I have a bit of a whimsical question, Harris. What's your favorite queue driver?
Redis, all the way.
Redis.
Yeah, for sure.
And another whimsical question. I guess, Harris, what kind of common mistakes do you see developers make when setting up queues for the first time in Laravel?
For the first time, okay. They forget, like I mentioned earlier, they really forget that when they deploy new code, they don't restart the queues in order for the worker to get the new code. And they keep running the old code. They dispatch new jobs, but the worker keeps running in memory, so it runs the old code. So that's definitely one of the biggest mistakes I see. And the other one is that you try to access authentication stuff or request stuff inside the jobs, but this is not how it happens in this case. It's not a web request. So you should keep that in mind.
Okay, well, good to know. Tips and tricks as you're starting out. That's great.
In terms of queue monitoring, Harris, is Horizon kind of your go-to there in terms of just being able to have a general sense of how well the queues are performing? And beyond Horizon, do you have any experience or any recommendations for any other packages or services that might help you monitor your queues?
To be honest, I've been using Horizon for many years now, and that's my go-to thing because you can really spot any kind of bottleneck. So let's say you have some changes in your code, some of your jobs, you can see that the change that you did, if it affected the whole queue, in a bad way or in a good way. So I would suggest to go with Horizon regardless.
Seems to be a good place to start, and then can go from there if you need, I guess, some other granular insights.
It does scale for sure. It does scale. If you're asking that, it does scale.
Oh yeah. I did have a question about actually Horizon, the metrics piece there. That's something I've never really used myself, and to be honest, it's a little embarrassing. I feel like I click on metrics usually on the instance I have it running, and it says like not enough data or something, and I don't see any charts. What am I doing wrong? Do you have any insight there?
You don't have the command, the PHP Artisan Horizon snapshot command. Okay. So you need to say this command, for example, every 5 minutes to run every 5 minutes.
Grab a snapshot.
And once you do that, you have a great diagram showcasing all the jobs in there, the throughput and everything.
I'm going to do that today. Thank you. Looks like we have a new question in the chat here we could pull in. What do we have here? What's the current best practice stack for real-time features in Laravel? Chat notifications, should we prefer Sockety over Laravel WebSockets? I mean, I guess this isn't specific to queues necessarily, but could be connected to queues. Any thoughts here from the group?
In my opinion, I would still stick to Laravel, the Laravel way, which is the new package that was released for Laravel WebSockets. I don't remember the name now. I'm a bit embarrassed, but it's not Sockety. It's not. If it's Laravel WebSockets, the one she's talking about, I would definitely go with that in this case.
All right. Any other questions on your side, Margaret?
Those are all the questions that I got on my side. So.
How do I get metrics to work was certainly one I wanted to. Yeah, and I think in general, I guess one other question I had, and again, I think you touched on it a little bit, Harris, was the option to have dedicated queues for certain tasks, right? And that's another a little bit. I find my paralysis by analysis a little bit. Like any strategies or thoughts, like how do I determine what when I might want to have a dedicated queue? Is your strategy to sort of just put everything on the same queue unless you feel like you need something more? Like any thoughts there on how do I determine what dedicated workers and queues I may need in an application?
I think it all comes down to your priorities in sense of, like I mentioned in one of the examples, let's say that you would like to have an invoice, like an invoice job, you invoice a client. I think that this one, for example, has a pretty high priority. So this would definitely go in a different queue, different than, for example, fetching Facebook posts, let's say, right? So you need to figure out, you need to sit down and check your jobs, check the priorities each of this job has, how fast you want it to be there, because some of the jobs, you might need them in milliseconds, and some you don't care if it comes after 5 or 10 minutes. So this will define the queue priority.
Yeah, so very much application specific again, which makes a lot of sense. But, yeah. Okay. All right. I mean, that answered a lot of the thoughts in my mind. Definitely, I'm going to go and get my metrics working right away in Horizon. Now that I've got some insights there. Any other questions on your side, Margaret, before we let Harris go?
Those are the questions. I guess if there's any other questions, Harris, we can also message you. Sometimes we get them afterwards as well. But thank you so much. It was such a great talk. Very informative.
I also hadn't
Thank you for
hadn't
having me.
seen the Laravel Cues in Action book by Mohammed, so I definitely want to check
For
that out
sure.
myself.
For sure. Yes,
Myself
please.
has used a lot before. Awesome. Well, thank you yet again, Harris, for joining us today and sharing all your insights. There's a lot of some good info nuggets there. Hoping you'll take away and start using right away in our daily work. So, thank you once again for joining us, and looking forward to seeing you next week at Laracon US.
Yeah. Thank you, guys.
Thanks.
See you.
All right. Bye-bye.
Thank you. Bye.
All right. Yes. Thank you yet again, Harris, for joining us. And Margaret, before we let the greater group grow here, we've just got a little bit of housekeeping to take care of. So let's here we go. Hand things over to you.
Great. Thanks so much, Dan. So please join us next month for our next online meetup. We're going to be meeting on August 26th, 2025. So stay tuned for that. We also have our giveaway. So here again is the QR code. We're going to open it up today and it's going to close on August 5th. So all you got to do is scan that QR code and you're up to win one of 2 JetBrains IDE product licenses for an entire 1-year subscription.
Just leave that up there for a moment longer.
And if you haven't followed us on X yet, you can do so at Laravel WW Meetup. That's where we post all of our events, any updates, who our speakers are going to be, and to get a hold of us, please message us on there if you would like to reach out to us, as well as Blue Sky. We all are also on there, so you can follow us and keep up to date. We also have our official website where you can go to meetup.laravel.com to stay up to date with all the latest meetups, and you can also sign up for email reminders as well. And again, thanks for watching us on YouTube. You can check out the Laravel official YouTube channel. There's a lot of great content on there from a lot of very talented people that want to help grow the community. So make sure to follow us if you'd like to learn a bit more.
Absolutely. And speaking of great content, don't forget to check out all of Harris's great content, both with Laravel News and on his website there. And yeah, thank you yet again for Harris for joining us today. And thank you everyone for tuning in and joining us this month. We're thrilled and looking forward to Laracon US. Anyone who's going to be there, please come and say hi to Margaret and myself. Check out the vehicle booth, and we look forward to seeing a bunch of people in person. So, any parting thoughts before we head off, Margaret?
Hope everyone enjoyed the meetup. And yeah, if you're going to be at Laracon US, make sure to say hi. I can't wait to see everybody in person again and learn some more Laravel. It's great.
Absolutely. All right. Have a great day, everybody. We'll see some of you at Laracon US, and we'll see the rest of you at next month's meetup. Have a great day.
See ya.